Welcome to Spotlight Grenada. On this week's episode is esteemed founder, artistic director, and chief playwright of the Heritage Theatre Company of Grenada, Inc. As one of the outstanding playwrights of the Caribbean, he has significantly contributed to the region's cultural landscape. He has written in excess of 25 plays, and he is showing no signs of slowing down. My guest for this episode is Mr. Christopher DeRiggs. And welcome back once again. This is Spotlight Grenada, a brand new episode. And of course, we're going to be featuring someone truly talented. Son of the soil, he is a founder, artistic director, and chief playwright of Heritage Theatre Company of Grenada, Inc. I'm speaking about Mr. Christopher DeRiggs, of course. So it is a pleasure. Usually people say it's a pleasure having you here at the end of the interview. But I want to say it at the beginning before we get started. How you been?
Let me begin by saying thank you for having me.
Most welcome.
With regard to how I've been, I think I well thanks.
You're well thanks.
Yes, and so on. So I look forward to this conversation.
Absolutely, yes. So do I. I thought it was fitting to have you here because, of course, you are one of our stalwarts in the creative industry, and I think a lot of people know you, but a lot of people still don't know you and your story. People know of all the amazing work you've been doing for the past 34 years. I can't believe it, 34 years. And I think this is the perfect way to start this interview. What was your first play?
The first play that I wrote was written while I was a student at GBSS. I was fairly active in the GBSS drama group at the time, and we were performing plays written by West Indian playwrighs like Douglas Archibald, Errol John, Freddie Kissoon, Errol Hill, and so on. And we felt that we wanted something that was Grenadian, something that we could say is authentic Grenadian. And so we began to experiment with storylines, and we ended up with a skit called Pass the Budget. It was a satirical skit about the theatrics that happen in Parliament when the politicians get together to debate the budget. Right. And at that time, the Prime Minister of Grenada was Mr. Sir Eric Machugeri.
Oh boy.
The skit was extremely hilarious. It knocked people off their seats. And in fact, while the students were totally amused, some of my colleagues at GBSS, they were a bit terrified. They wondered, they say, you interfering with people and so on. So it's a long time I interfere with people. and so it started with theater.
Right.
And so on. So that was my first play, but later on, I graduated into something more challenging. My first real play was a play called Pan in My Blood, and that was a Pan Man story. It was a story of Grenada in the 60s. Think about steel bands like Angel Harps and so on, and the other bands that are around the place, and so on. At one time, we had a band called Panasonic and so on, which just up in the cocoa from where I was living and so on. But so I drew from that experience, and I knew some of the steel band players, like a guy named Boyk. Boyk was one of the outstanding steel band players. So somehow, I wrote a story about a man who was a pan man and poverty went together. And this steel band man, right, was talented, and he saw his son become a steel band player, but he didn't want his son to grow up in poverty, so he sent him away to New York. And this boy go in New York, and what he do? He go and study music and anthropology, and he come back in Grenada and start a steel band group again. So much to his father's dismay. And so he was perpetuating a cycle of poverty as far as his father was concerned.
Right.
And, but it was more than that. They take over our old estate great house and make it into a pan house. So there was social dimensions, class conflict. This man taking over this old estate house and so on. And all them young boys of the carnage and so on who just shiftless and in working and so on. He bring them together in that and so on. So that was a play, Pan in My Blood. And when I wrote the script, I give it to a professor called Professor Errol Hill, who was the Caribbean's leading theater historian who happened to be staying at Koyaba. He looked at the play. He told me come back the next day and he going to tell me what he think about it. And when he showed me the script the next day, red ink all over it and so on, I said, Lord boy, I can't write play.
Wow.
He said, no, the play is fresh, but you need to capture the rudiments of playwriting and so on. And I staged it, right? But then I put it down for 4 years and came back afterwards and rewrote it. And I think I was more receptive to his criticism. It took me years. The criticism had to consume me inside of me, right?
Yeah, gotcha.
And I come back and I rewrite the play. Took it to Aruba International Theatre Festival and got a standing ovation.
And you got a standing ovation. Wow, that's amazing.
So Panama Blood, therefore, has a special place in my heart. That really gave me new confidence.
Yeah.
Yes.
The passion and the energy that you've just answered that first question, we creatives, we get like that. We get excited, especially when we speak of what we do and,
we can't help it,
Yeah, when we're in our zone and what they say, when you're in your element. I don't think I've ever seen you answer questions so passionate in an interview. Wow. But then again, I could be wrong.
Maybe you're getting old and more cantankerous.
Cantankerous. When it comes to writing, playwright, what would you say is the most challenging aspect of it? For you personally?
As writers, we want to be relevant. We want to write about something that people will find interesting.
Yeah.
So the first challenge is to find a relevant subject matter. There's a lot that is interesting, but interesting to who? And you have to decide who is your target market, who you're writing for, who you want to read your story or see your play. But in terms of once you have decided on the subject matter, and sometimes it's not a conscious decision. Sometimes it comes to you, riding on a bus or walking through the market square or listening to somebody debating something on the radio, some call-in program, somebody says something and it catch you, right? Yeah. But in terms of the rules, the rules of story, the dynamics of story, you have to ensure that you have the correct characters. Characters act true to their being, their nature. So if you want to write a story about a conflict, how the conflict will develop depends on who are driving the conflict, who are the characters involved. So a man who is laid back and priestly, he would live out his conflict in a more measured, restrained manner, so that he may not choose a gun, as opposed to somebody who grew up on the fringes of society, in the ghetto, who have a conflict to resolve. He will choose a knife or a gun. You see, so how the story develops depends on the character. Character drives story. So I think one of the most important challenges is to find interesting characters who can actually drive the story that you want to develop and so on.
Forget about her, sweetheart. She's absolutely nothing to me. Nothing. So get her out of your mind and let's enjoy ourselves.
A client?
Yes, a client, that's all.
Well, I don't believe.
What?
I said I don't believe you.
You don't believe me?
No, I don't believe you one little bit.
The characters and the story must be relatable. People must be able to. I could see that person walking down the street. That is somebody I could sit down next to in church. In fact, I sit down next to a man like that in the stadium and watch a football match the other day. You see what I'm saying? Right. So those are the aspects of it. It has to be relatable. You're creating an illusion, but the illusion has to be believable. And so in terms of what are the most important challenges, I would say you must find something that is relevant, that people find interesting. You must find a storyline, right, that is well structured, but you must find characters to drive the conflict in the story. And in terms of the structure of story, every story has a kind of dynamic. You start at the beginning of the story. You have what was sometimes called the exposition, where you start off, you introduce people to the characters and the setting and so on, right? And then you have the rise in action as in a film, right? It goes to a climax. But the climax is the high point. But there's a resolution of the story. How do you resolve a story? The resolution must be believable. Some people writing a story, they come to a point where They're desperate to have a resolution. So they choose anything they could get. But it is not a credible resolution. A man is an alcoholic. And you're writing his story and you want him to break out of that habit. Does he have an epiphany? Does he have a moment where his soul is shaken up? We have to find transition, moving from one situation to the next. So a character undergoes a rethinking of his life. There might be an inner struggle you have to bring in the story and so on. So he has a conflict, not just with other people around him who can't stand his nasty alcoholic behavior, but in his own mind and his own self, he has to come to terms with his desire to change and the need to change and so on. So that struggle has to come out also in the story. So these are some of the things, that you try to get right when you're writing an interesting story, as in a play.
It's very true.
People do not define this thing, in clinical, technical terms as somebody who is a professor of literature. But a man go and watch a play, right? And you watch a story, I like how that story ends. It don't feel real. So that is it. You have to find real paths forward to resolve a story and make it look natural and not contrived.
Very true, very true. Tell me a little bit about your family, your heritage theatre family, and your journey, 30 plus years.
I had come back from university in Sweden, where I studied economics. And I reconnected with some individuals who I had done theatre with either in GBSS, when I was both a student and a teacher at GBSS subsequently, and also during the period of the revolution, when we had something called Theatre Group of the National Youth Organization, TGNYO. And at that time, we were doing productions that were multimedia with song, dance, dialogue integrated, but also with a social message. We felt to validate our existence at the time, we had to put out productions that were socially weighty and so on. My attitude changed to art after that. I felt, what brings you in the fun of it? If you happen to tell a story that other people find interesting and uplifting, great. But some of us got together in my living room in the Limes there, just across the road from Dynamite Disco. Right. Asquith Duncan, Halim Griffith, Halim Abdul Wali. Right. We had Shirley Braffett, Louisa Chase, and then Louisa Lewis actually. Christine Clarkson came on board shortly thereafter. There was a guy called Dr. Omowale Franklin. He has passed away. He was a writer and, international worker, worked with the UN and so on, was with us at the time and so on at the formation. And we decided we want to develop our own indigenous Grenadian theatre. I just come back from Jamaica. In Jamaica, I'd seen from the sublime to the ridiculous in terms of the quality of theatre. They had something called crotch theatre, which was like instant coffee. You understand? Things that people just pull off the street with no big set of storyline and so on, but it's just for its sensationalism and so on. Right? Dancehall theatre, some people call it at a certain time. And I felt, when I knew Grenada was not without precedent. We had Willie Redhead. Willie Redhead, who was associated with, the museum, the initiative to set up a museum, to curate the buildings of St. George's, and so on. His name, they used to call him Skipper. And I discovered that he had actually written plays that were being produced in Jamaica in secondary school festivals and so on. And we had Pansy Rowley from before and the Glee Club that she had. And so there were precedents. And T.A. Marichaud himself, you understand, what was Marichaud House? The Rosary, right? The Billa Theatre behind there and so on. That was the genesis of the Marichaud Folk Theatre. So we had things that we had started before and so on. Thelma Phillip at the time, And so we decided that there was a basis upon which we could build and form our own Grenadian theatre, write our own plays. And thus we began to stage these plays. Along the way, right, we moved from just staging an occasional production in a school, in the countryside, in a cinema in Guelph, which was like a cauldron. Everybody sweating inside there, and people coming on the next to the stage and pull you when you say something they like. You understand? The GBSS auditorium and so on, and then Marisha House, right? We become more organized and more consistent over the years, and started producing play after play, and then we started, traveling overseas and doing our productions in New York, in Toronto, in Montreal, in Florida, in the Bronx, in Washington D.C. and so on, around the Caribbean, Antigua, St. Kitts, St. Vincent, and so on, Trinidad. So we eventually end up performing. We're invited to perform in an international theater festival in Aruba. And we were one of only 4 groups of 13 companies, most of them professionals. We were one of only 4 of them to receive a standing ovation.
Wow.
All right. And so our confidence developed in our art, and we developed a clientele. One day, Dana Hercules, who runs, Dana's Catering, she said, Chris, Chris, you all have outgrown the GBSS auditorium. You need to do shows in the Trade Center. And we came down here. We were the first theater company in Grenada to bring a major production in the Trade Center. Others followed. And I'm glad to say that. I'm proud to say that, right? We paved the way. We were the pioneers. And we started staging production after production. So it's a long story, but I'm saying that all to say it has been an interesting, intense period of doing theater, of discovering our capabilities, building on our capabilities, and being ambassadors for culture, not just here in Grenada, but outside of Grenada.
We are both people. We are both people. Is the boat that really have us so?
Along the way, we have lost people. People have died. Christine Clarkson, I still haven't really recovered from the loss of Christine Clarkson. She was our best acting talent in Grenada at the time. She's gone too soon.
Manuel! What seems to be the matter, lady?
I can't sleep, Captain.
Oh, motion of the ocean?
The boat shaking up too much.
Now, you two have certainly fallen in love, haven't you?
I don't like the best ball in the man, Captain.
Well, even strange bedfellows must bed down together sometimes.
He's not the kind of fellow I won't bed down with, Captain.
Well, I cannot understand that.
You know something, Wilbert?
What?
Just by the Judge's questions you're asking, I know that you're drunk.
Asquith Duncan died under tragic circumstances. It was traumatic, when he died. And most recently, Sherwin Sylvester.
Yeah, that's right.
Sherwin just about 5 years ago. Right? I mean, maybe less than that, right? And again, such a vibrant, young theater talent. And we're doing a comedy show next month. And Sherwin would have been a major player So, but right now we're trying to adapt to the new situation and move out of just staging plays on stage, but using the digital platform to put out our work and to do a lot of other stuff. We've been involved in training, a lot of training also.
That is fantastic. We're going to take a quick break, folks, and when we come back, I'll continue my conversation with Mr. Christopher DeRiggs. More right here on Spotlight Grenada.
Hello everyone, this is Kurt Knight and you're watching Lexan Digital Media.
Welcome back. This is another edition of Spotlight Grenada. I just want to say a special hello right now to all the viewers via Flow 1 throughout the Caribbean. Thank you so much for watching, and we truly appreciate your support. So I'm continuing my conversation with Mr. Christopher DeRiggs, and this is really... You see, sometimes you need to share backstories. Backstories are so important, I believe, because, like I mentioned earlier, yes, everybody can say, yes, we know Mr. DeRiggs, he writes plays, he does plays, that sort of thing. but do you really know the man behind the plays and the passion he has and all of that? And I'm so happy that we're doing this conversation. And this next question I really, really had to fit in because I know you've tackled so many different themes, such as, political comedies, HIV/AIDS, educational topics. What would you say drives you to explore such diverse topics through your productions?
I go back to the whole matter of relevance, looking for relevant themes, addressing questions that people are grappling with. Recently I had a conversation with a doctor who has asked me now to write a story about mental health in Grenada. I tend to respond to the demands, challenges put down to me, laid down to me. Dr. Curtis Jacobs, historian, he challenged me to write a story about Julian Fedor. George Brizan, former Prime Minister, had also made a similar challenge to me. So after years of, ducking from these challenges, I was afraid of the research involved in doing a play of that, but I eventually read about 7 books and then wrote that play and so on. We tend to put up our antenna and listen for what is current and what is sexy and what people want to hear about and so on. So we try to address that. Sometimes it is not so difficult. During the pandemic, people were locked in and frustrated. And I write a story about a man who was locked in and frustrated, right? And it was called Patient Zero. Family goes to a cruise and come back with the pandemic. End up killing the patriarch of the family, the old man, who didn't go on the cruise, and he stayed home and so on. But in all that, we were able to educate our audiences about how to manage their personal lives and their socialization in a pandemic situation. So it was doing a lot of social good. We were contracted to do a series of production on climate change. So in the case, and this was really interesting because we work with focus groups in communities. So we went to New Hampshire and met with the farmers in that community, and we dealt with the issue of deforestation, how it affects agricultural production. Very nice. Right. And we went to La Poterie of Marquide on the East Coast, and we dealt with sargassum weed infestation, right? We went to Rose Hill, and we dealt with the unlawful, illegal harvesting of leatherback turtles and sand mining and so on, and what does that mean in terms of the ecology and of the country and of that part of Grenada. We went to Carriacou and Petit Martinique, dealt with the rising sea levels. We had a production called Saving Paradise, and how the destruction of the coral reef affects, results in higher and more destructive wave action and loss of coastline areas. Right. And how we did it. We had focus groups. Focus group would be receive a lecture from some expert on what climate change is. And then we'd ask the members of the focus group, look around your community. Do you see any evidence of this problem? And if so, who owns the problem? And what do you think can be the response? And subsequently, we stage a production, but we do a kind of collective creative process where members of the focus group write the story. Right. We sit them down in a circle. We ask them to contribute ideas to the storyline. I script it, and I get them to perform it in front of the community.
That is excellent.
So wow. Issues like climate change, yes, we have worked with different government ministries on the abuse of alcohol by young and other substances by young people. We have dealt with issue of HIV education. Yes. So we try to make ourselves relevant and useful. So it's a continuation of this striving to be relevant and striving to make an impact. So there's a lot of stuff we do.
Excellent. That is excellent. We're getting close to the conclusion of our wonderful chat here, but I really want you to share your advice to the youth, especially, you have quite a prolific career, and your advice to future playwrights in the making, even artists who are just starting on their creative journey. Even me, I would love to hear,
When I did my thing, started the landscape was different.
Yeah.
Right now, there are new avenues, but new challenges. But regardless of when you start, you must, first of all, recognize that you want to do it. You must have passion.
Yeah.
When you wake up in the morning, you should be thinking about that. When you go to sleep in the night, you should be thinking about that. You must have passion. You must be driven by a burning desire, right? Sometimes you feel that if I do this, I go dead, right? So you need to be driven by that passion, right? But passion alone will not do it, right? You have to learn the rules of the game, right? If you want to be a writer, you have to learn the mechanics, the dynamics of writing. You can't get around it. You might have style, you might have natural flair, but you have to learn the rudiments of it. Yeah. And the same is true for people who want to sing, learn music, and so on. And you have to seek assistance. Don't be too proud or swell-headed to hitch your wagon to a moving train. You know, look at people who are succeeding and sometimes shamelessly copy what they're doing, right? It doesn't mean you sacrifice your creativity, right? A lot of people want to sing and so on, and ask them, you just want to be a cover artist for the rest of your life, right? Yeah. You know, did you come here to just be a carbon copy of what's going on? And it's so a poor carbon copy. You have to find your own space and your own style, and don't be afraid, right, at what naysayers would say. Okay, so there are a number of factors that come together, but I believe that there are a lot of opportunities for those who really want to do it, and it's an exciting array of possibilities for people who really want to become artists. It's not going to be easy generally, but you have to be prepared, have the ice in your stomach, as we say, to go for it, and go for it in a bold way. Go bold and go brave.
Don't be afraid to put in the work and face rejections, and I guess I just had to put in my little two pence, right?
See, people see the show, but they didn't see the work behind it.
That's it.
You have to work.
You got to work.
You have to work.
You do have something in the pipeline. If you can quickly let folks know what's coming up.
Spice Laugh Comedy Festival, June 22nd, 23rd at the Trade Center, and June the 30th at the Deluxe Cinema. This is going to be the funniest comedy show Grenadians ever attended. We have some headliners like Robert White, Dillion Walters, Karim Alexis, Dale Bowler, and others, right? A very formidable, talented cast of comedic actors. And we promise, our audiences that this one is going to be special. We're making it a signature event every year around this time to do a comedy show with Grenadian comedic talent, which I say stands up very well with anything they could import from any other part of the Caribbean and other places.
You said it. We believe you, and you said it.
Yeah.
Mr. DeRiggs, thank you so very much.
Thank you
you so much. I really appreciate your time. You're very welcome. Folks, I've been chatting with artistic director, playwright, the man behind the scenes. Now he's in front. You know who he is. You know what he's done. And I'm so happy that he's joined us today. I'm happy, and I hope that you're happy as well for this conversation today. Thank you so very much again for watching Spotlight Grenada. For those of you who are viewing from the diaspora, and I see your feedback all the time, we do appreciate you. Don't forget to follow the Facebook page and also our YouTube channel. Subscribe today. And we look forward to another great episode right here on Lexan Digital Media. Have a great one. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.